What's up, everyone, and welcome back to my continuing coverage of the 2019 Dallas International Film Festival. I'm Chase Lee, and I love festival time. It's a wonderful time to just go see a bunch of movies and see what sticks, and, you know, maybe you find something that will land on the best of the year list, or maybe you'll find something that you want to forget about immediately, or maybe you watch something so bad that you have to go home and take a shower afterwards. So film festival time is always special every single year. This one's extra special because I got engaged, but in general, the film festival time is always the best, and there's one of our dogs in the background. So, so this is the 8th film that I have seen, and it is from Bleecker Street, and it is directed by Tom Shadyac, and if you remember that name, and you're like, wow, that one is actually ringing a bell, director of Nutty Professor, Bruce Almighty, Evan Almighty, Ace Ventura, Liar Liar. This guy was like a 90s comedy icon, and of course early 2000s, but unfortunately after Evan Almighty, he got into an accident, and he hadn't really made a movie in a while, and so this is kind of like his, comeback. This is his, first big-ish feature since Evan Almighty. That was 12 years ago. Insanity. So, I've always been a fan of this director, and so I was really curious to see how he would handle a drama and how he would really kind of dive into this specific character. I mean, the movie is called Brian Banks, and how he was going to explore this situation. So, if you guys don't know, Brian Banks is about, and this happened in 2006 actually, so this is very, very recent. Happened in 2006. Brian Banks was accused of rape, and he was 16 at the time, and he was sentenced to jail for 6 years. So he didn't get out until he was 22, and then he was also on probation, I think for another 5. Insane sentence for something that he didn't do. Anyways, it's a very iconic court photo of Brian Banks' head is down on the table while the judge is giving him his sentence. It's really kind of devastating to watch because you know deep down that this man has said over and over again that he didn't do it, and like at some point, like you either got to believe him or you don't. But I think with that much conviction, I believed him, and it's just like he's still being sentenced, and then he was eventually released, and then he got involved with the California Innocence Project led by Justin Brooks, which is played by Greg Kinnear in the story, and he tries to clear his name and try to reverse this entire thing because he was labeled as a sex offender, and he had kidnapping charges. So not only did he have to be a sex offender for the rest of his life, he also couldn't get a job. He couldn't go anywhere near parks or schools or whatever. It was very tough for him to do anything, and he was shackled by this false accusation, and it's really just devastating to watch. And so, obviously, if you know the story, let's just say the grass is greener on the other side. Just in case you don't know the story, I'm going to kind of go in this movie blind. So, how was this movie? I loved it. And it might have been because of the lackluster selections at the festival so far, but I loved every single moment of this movie. Sure, you could look at this movie and you can say, oh, wow, this is... it's a basic story. Some of the dialogue sounds corny coming out of their mouths because it is very inspirational type of like monologues and stuff. So people might, be turned off by that. Some people might be turned off by the simplicity of the story because we know how it's going to end and stuff. But you know what? That didn't deter from my experience. I love this entire thing. I think... What I really like about it is that Tom Shadyac, like I said, he's known for his 90s movies, early 2000s. This feels like a 90s movie. And what's even crazier is that, yes, it has like a 90s inspirational kind of feel-good attitude about it, but it also highlights stuff that happened recently. Recent injustice. An injustice that still goes on to this day. It's insane to me how broken the court system and the justice system is. And this movie kind of highlights that, and you kind of sit there and go, "Wow, like we're already halfway through 2019, and this stuff still happens." So I think with Tom Shadyac's kind of approach is that he kind of has this like 90s flavor throughout this entire movie, but he kind of like focuses on this really meaty dialogue that kind of just highlights how broken the system is, even of today, and even stuff that applied 13 years ago. It's still happening, and so it's kind of like this really urgent and well-written dialogue that he kind of like throws in our faces, and these characters have these really kind of inspirational and kind of affecting speeches in this film, and a lot of lingering shots on faces and kind of like slow push-ins to their faces. Just a lot of room to let the actors kind of breathe and do their thing, and really letting the story and the performances speak for themselves. So Shadyac, good job, sir. Speaking of the performances, heavy hitters, heavy hitting performances all around. I'm gonna start with the Greg Kinnear first, and I'll work my way up because I think Mr. Hodge deserves a longer chunk of the review. And so Greg Kinnear, it's the best thing he's done in years. He is a great supporting character in this film in terms of propelling the story, supporting the lead, and overall just a well-rounded performance. Great stuff. Best thing I've seen from him in years. Aldous Hodge plays Brian Banks. Phenomenal. I loved it. The last thing I saw him in was What Men Want with Taraji P. Henson. I think after this film, I think you should scratch that one off, never speak of it again, and just say you did Brian Banks this year. So, and I'm fully aware that he's done other stuff on his IMDb and all that, but that was the most recent thing I saw him in, and that was not a good movie. But he was the hunk in What Men Want, if you were curious. So, Aldous Hodge is so good as Brian Banks that if you did not have a great actor in this role, this movie would have fallen apart. You need someone to convince us the emotion and convey this really kind of like large amount of empathy on the audience. And that is hard to do. But he does it in spades. I mean, there is so much kind of like maneuvering with this character in this performance that at one point he is a jock. He's kind of a meathead. He's the one of the more popular kids in school. And then the next he's in jail and he's trying to fight for his life, and people are antagonizing him, and he goes a little crazy and solitary. And then he is released from jail. He's got sex offender on his record now. He's got kidnapping charges. He can't get a job, and like it's breaking him down. And then he finds Justin Brooks, and he has that fight to clear his name, and the determination to just wipe all this away and move on with his life. It's one of those performances that struck me as just great from start to finish. There is not a down spot in what he does, and I loved every single moment he was on screen. He was really convincing in everything that he was saying. Once again, a lot of meaty dialogue in this movie, but he sells it. And I really felt for the guy, and I just wanted him to get the correct justice at the end and really kind of turn this around, because he seemed like a great guy, just wanting to clear his name so he can get a job and start his future. And I loved it. It's just so good. All the supporting characters are fine. Anywhere beyond Greg Kinnear and Aldous Hodge is just like, hey, they good. It's not anything that I go, wow, that person was great, that person was great. Sherry Shepherd plays his mom. Really nice, tender performance that wants to see her son, complete this and everything. So, yeah, she was great. The parole officer was, kind of a D-bag, but, just doing his job. I get that. So, yeah, I think everyone was really kind of lived in their roles and really kind of sold me on this whole story. The music feels very 90s. If you watch any of Shadyak's earlier movies, whether it be Liar Liar, which is also revolved heavily around a courtroom, it kind of has like that 90s kind of feel where it's, kind of quiet when it needs to be. It's very sweeping and inspirational when it needs to be. It felt like a Shadyak movie. I kind of like that. And then also, I think for its 100-minute runtime, probably one of the most brisk movies that I've seen at the festival so far. It doesn't waste any time. It starts out with, Brian Banks getting his ankle monitor, and we're off. We're off to the races because it's really interesting because, he's got limited time to fix this around. And so we have limited time with him, but that limited time that we have is very, very powerful in the journey that he takes. And so I kind of like that. Once again, going back to the urgency of the screenplay. So yeah, and then all the way boiling down to the courtroom, like, what's going to happen, but it's still kind of like nail biting because you're like, I just want this guy to succeed. He's tried so hard throughout this entire movie, and he does. And so you just leave the theater feeling good, and you feel like justice was finally served correctly. And I really wish, the justice system, would be fixed and not be as broken as it is, because there's still a lot of people out there that have been, wrongly convicted, and they're currently still in jail. And it's really sad. But for this movie, and in this case in particular, great stuff all around. I might feel differently, and it might be because of the lackluster selection at this film festival, but I'm going to give this movie an A. And when this movie comes out in August, a lot of you might watch this and be like, man, it wasn't that great. It was just okay. It was just good. That's fine. But I'm just letting you guys know that Brian Banks is a really great movie, and it actually has an opportunity, I think, because I was discussing this with my co-host last night, 2 opportunities for award season if Bleecker Street wants to push. So this is my push to say this, Bleecker Street, if you're listening. Screenplay and supporting actor for Greg Kinnear. I would push Aldous Hodge as lead. Gotta see the rest of the films for the rest of the year first, but I'm comfortable with saying those 2 for right now. Now, if I go throughout the rest of the year and the lead actor category is weak, then you throw Hodge in there. But this one does have considering awards and stuff. So yeah, so that is my review of Brian Banks. So what did you guys think of Brian Banks, or have you heard of it? It doesn't even open up until August, so I don't know why I'm even asking that. So when you do eventually see it, come back to this review and let me know. But that will do it for this review, guys. And tune in next time for my continuing coverage of the 2019 Dallas International Film Festival. See you guys later.